Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Before we start talking horror, though, I got to let you know I've been talking with this guy about horror for about a half hour now, and I've been having the time of my life. I'm joined by the screenwriter and director for Angry Mule Productions, Steve Tramontana. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks, Ken, for having me on the show. This is super cool. I love this idea.
Oh, dude, and I've been having a blast talking to you, talking about other horror movies besides your first movie. We've had a good time. While we're on that subject of having a little bit of time, I know times are kind of crazy with you right now during quarantine. What you been up to, man? Trying to stay safe and...
Yeah, it helps when you're a bit of an indoor kid because I've been spending a lot of time, writing and catching up on all the movies that I haven't been able to catch up on. And I think the silver lining is just having some time to have additional perspective, getting more time to hang out with my wife and enjoy that quiet time. So I'm trying to constantly find the silver lining as we all patiently wait to get through this,
Right. And I'm glad that you're staying safe. I'm glad that you're appreciating the time with your wife. I have 3 kids and a wife, so I definitely understand where you're coming from. It's nice to be able to just sit down and get to know them again, rather than being out running all the time. For those of you that don't know, Steven has worked on such films as Killer Pinata, A Very Tight Place, much more Eyelash as well. Like I said, I know things are crazy with COVID, but can you give us any update about any future projects you got going on?
Yeah, exactly. So right now, it's funny, we have a new short out that we really love. It's called Grief Counseling. We were supposed to be doing the festival circuit with it this year, but of course, all the festivals are paused for good reason, for COVID. So we're on hold with Grief Counseling. We've been working really hard in the background. We have a new distributor for KP, which is really exciting. We're working on a 5th anniversary set that we're going to announce fully pretty soon. And what it's allowed us to do is go back. We always kind of wanted to rework Killer Pinata a little bit. It was a little loose. We wanted to go in and cut about 8 minutes out of it, recolor correct it, color grade it. We wanted to redo the sound mix, like make it more dynamic. So for the last couple of months, we've actually been pulling all the original dailies, reworking Killer Pinata. It's going to be a 2-disc set with a bunch of bonuses stuff. So we're really excited because this distributor, Darkside Releasing, has been doing some really great stuff. And so once we have that done, our next one that we're going to commit to in full is a sequel. It's going to be called Bride of Killer Pinata. And we'll be working on that, shooting that next year when we're safe to film again and putting that together. So a lot of stuff in the oven here.
Is there any way that people could watch Killer Pinata online?
Absolutely. So Killer Pinata is available on Amazon streaming. I think pretty much all over the world, North America for sure. And then it's available to rent, I think, on every iTunes, Vudu, your destination of choice. But yes, definitely Amazon. You can watch it streaming for free.
I'll have that link down here in the description for you guys as well. Just some free catch up on this before you get the rework, because you all know how we hate sequels and remakes. So they're probably going to ruin Killer Pinata. So go here and watch it before they do.
Well, it's funny. We went into this with we had this thing, and no offense to George Lucas, I adore George Lucas, but we didn't want to Lucasize it. Our role was basically like, how do we clean up the stuff we didn't like, but leave everything that people love? So I think the funny thing is, I think when people watch it, they'll definitely notice the sound mix. Ryan Aldrich, who does all of our stuff, has been working on it. Sounds amazing. I actually just watched most of it the other day with what he was doing. Paul Summers has been reworking the color grading. But I think in terms of the movie, it'll be pretty much the movie everybody remembers, just a little bit more, a little tight on the pacing, right? So some lines have been dropped, stuff like that. So it's not you don't have a CGI Killer Pinata running through there all of a sudden. It's still a dumb basic puppet.
No, and honestly, I've said this 1,000 times. I would rather have good practical effects to mediocre practical effects over good to mediocre CGI. So I'm very excited to see what you guys do. For those of you that don't know, I was kidding. I'm not down on remakes or anything like that. And me and Steven were just talking about that a minute ago. I just had to poke fun at him for that. But I'm very excited to see. Just because you're reworking something doesn't mean you're dumbing it down. So I'm very excited to see that you guys are putting more of your own vision back into the film, that we have the ability to go back and do that now, for you to make it what you wanted it to be at the beginning. So that's really cool for me, and I'm very excited for you. So any updates you get, please give them to me so I can give them out to everybody. I'd be honored to share any updates you guys ever have with all the people out there as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And Dark Side Go, we also agreed that we will be releasing the original cut with it. So we all were on the same page. So like, it's two different versions, whatever one you prefer, it's all there. To like what we were talking about earlier, which is like, one doesn't replace the other. However you want to experience it, roll with it. We're good either way.
Right. And now you're getting two movies essentially.
True. Yeah. So it'll be a lot of fun. It's great, cool stuff.
Right. So while we're talking about movies, let's get into it, man. Let's talk about your first horror movie. And your first horror movie was
Strange Invaders from 1983. Everyone's favorite.
That's everyone's choice when they come on here, man.
Exactly. Everyone's like, Strange Invaders again? God, enough.
So let me ask you this. Do you remember how old you were when you had finally seen the film?
So this is an interesting thing. So like we were talking about, I had to take a minute to figure out what the first horror movie that I remember. I originally thought it was Cujo, which is also a 1983 movie that I saw at the drive-in. My parents went there. I think they thought I was asleep, but I definitively remember watching Cujo at the drive-in and being like, I'm going to marry Dee Wallace as a 3-year-old. I thought I had a shot. But then I was like, no, that's not true. I remember my parents had HBO, and HBO in the early days was kind of the Wild West. Like, they had some weird stuff on HBO, like at all hours. And I remember I had fleeting visions of this movie with these blue orbs that had the power to essentially like shrink down skin. I remember there's a scene where it went into like a kid's bedroom, and the kid like is like 7, and the kid's watching this blue orb come in, and all of a sudden like the kid's like screaming for his dad. And it just sucks all the flesh in, like, and like all the flesh just collapsed. And then the kid just literally rips apart as this blue orb comes out. And as a 3-year-old, that kind of like messes you up. And
oh man, going from the American Tale to that, you know.
And so I couldn't remember what the movie was. And so for years, for decades, I was like, wow, what was that movie? And I kept trying to try. I thought, well, maybe it's The Thing, right? That seems similar, big kind of prosthetic effects, so on and so forth. And so I went through and I kept asking other horror fans, does this strike a bell? Last year, I was talking to one, and the guy goes, yeah, it's a movie called Strange Invaders. And I was like, okay. And I went and looked it up, and it's on YouTube. There's like a really bad version with Portuguese subtitles on YouTube. And there it was. Yep. And it's weird because now I'm looking at it as an adult, these memories as I had as a kid. I'm also looking at it as a filmmaker. And it was a sure. weird time travel situation where I was, oh my God, this is the movie I remember. So yeah, that was Strange Invaders, first movie I remember.
It's funny you say that, because we were talking about that too. And it's when you have the imagination of a child, sometimes you watch the movie as a child and then you don't watch it again until you're an adult. And it's almost a whole new movie because your imagination put so much more into the scenes and the sequences than it was really there. You almost made it more overdramatic because I think your brain gets scared, and it just enhances that horror as you get older, and it keeps replaying it scarier and scarier.
Yeah, no, I think that 100%. And you know, it's like anything when you have a memory as a child, like this house you remember as being massive, you go revisit as an adult, and it's like a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. You're like, oh, yeah. So it was fun to go back and look at it. And I was actually kind of surprised. They had some powerhouse people. So the writer of it was Bill Condon, who would later win the Academy Award for Gods and Monsters, and he did the Twilight movies. I mean, he's a really good writer, and he was almost doing Bride of Frankenstein. He was close on Bride of Frankenstein a couple years ago. It's a real tragedy when you get that. Paul LeMat, Nancy Allen from like the early De Palma films, she starred in it. Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, she's in it. So it's got like a pretty solid pedigree for the low budget film that it is, And
if you guys want, because it is an entertaining film, I went and watched because I had never seen it until we, got in contact with each other. I'm going to have the link for that down here in the description as well, guys. So you can go check that out. Like you said, not the best version of it, but it's an entertaining movie. It's something that you'll want to keep watching. It's not a masterpiece by any stretch, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a good sci-fi 50s throwback, and it kind of does its thing. But then you get into like the last 20 minutes, like when the ship arrives and stuff like that. I don't give too much away, but basically the last 20 minutes is really cool. You're like, okay, we kind of got through this detective story stuff, and now we're gonna have a really nice third act and take us out of this thing. Yeah,
but the thing is, it's not too much of a slow burn either, though. Like it's not. It doesn't
No.
drag out. You have a
No.
lot of entertainment throughout the movie. But like you said,
Yeah.
the third act is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can just tell that everyone had everyone got on. They were all on the same page. You know, there's a lot of love with this film. So you're like, you almost can't hate a movie like that because you're just in with them on it. You're like, great, let's hang out together and watch what you guys did. This is fun.
See, and I love movies like that. Now, was the blue orb in the kid? I was going to ask you what scene affected you the most. Do you think that's the scene that affected you the most because it stuck with you all this time?
Yeah, so that's so was that scene. It's when the dad, you know, he goes into the bedroom and he hears his kid's crying out for him. And then one of the alien people is like standing above the bed. And that's the part that I didn't remember. I was like, oh, okay, so it's in a bedroom, the alien guy's standing above. And in that scene disturbed me still, but for kind of different reasons. Because the blue orb comes out of the kid and the blue orb's approaching the dad. And it's still saying, Dad, you know, like it's this idea that your kid's been basically mauled, but it's still calling out for you, and all the blue orbs start heading out the window. And it was a weird thing, you know?
Well, and as a parent, you know, what do you do in that situation?
Totally.
Yeah.
We were talking about Nightmare on Elm Street earlier, and it's kind of the same way that the Tina death changes for me. You know, when I was a kid and saw it, obviously it was scary because of the blood and the way she's being dragged up. But then as an adult, it's a different kind of horror because now you have relationships. Now you know you're married, and this idea that your spouse, your partner could be attacked, and one, you can't see the person, and two, you're not going to do anything about it. You're just helpless. That gets you on a really different level as you kind of go. So it's same with this scene, you know.
And I love in the Tina scene that you don't see Freddy in the original one. When they kind of remade that scene in New Nightmare, and you could see Freddy dragging her up the wall. But maybe it's because of budget or whatever. But I think it works perfect that you don't see Freddy dragging her around. That makes it even, you know, from Rod's point of view, like him just seeing that. What's going through your mind? You're going crazy. Like, how is this happening to the girl that I love?
Well, and what's so effective too about that scene is the sound. That terrified like moaning as Tina's kind of being dragged across the ceiling. There's something about that vocal performance, you know, that it just gets you. It's kind of like this heavy breathing / I've never heard it in another movie done that well. And so I give a lot of credit to Amanda Weiss, and I'm assuming Craven had the direction on that, that you're like, wow, that was a really good decision. Because that's what makes that scene, is that her yells and moans and stuff. So.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. The only other scene I like, I think when Freddy comes through the wall.
Yeah.
Now, I love that scene as well. So when we're Strange Invaders, now that you're older, you've watched it a couple times. What's the first thing that pops in your head when you think about the movie?
Throwback. That's a word that I would go with. It feels like they got together, and I haven't read any of the production history on this, but it feels like when Bill Condon, I'm trying to remember the director's name, it's Michael Laughlin. And I feel like when they got together, they were like, we want to do a 50s sci-fi movie. And we know that it has to kind of be set in the 80s because they only have so much budget, but we want that feeling. And like their spacecraft design is even very like Plan 9 from Outer Space. It's like the classic, you know. So that's what makes it so fun. Yeah, it's really cool. And so when you set out from a place of like, and I guess we're doing this now a lot, right? But we're doing it with the 80s. Now we're kind of coming out of that, but everything from Super 8 to Stranger Things and all things in between, The Void, it feels like that's our version of that, you know?
Dude, I am so glad that you just brought up Super 8. No one knows what I'm talking about when I bring up Super 8, and that is a fantastic film.
Drives me nuts because everyone keeps talking about, I mean, I think we're out of the 80s nostalgia run that we were on for the last like 6 years. But I really feel the 80s nostalgia run has everything to do with Super 8. Super 8 was the first movie. They used the Cocoon music on that first trailer. That's that Amblin. They were the first movie to be like, oh, we're going to make a new Amblin movie. And I think that kicked off everything. You know?
And the kids in that movie were fantastic. The suspense build around the monster, never quite seeing what it is, the train crash, everything. Like, that is a amazing movie. Thank you for bringing that movie up. Every time I talk about that movie, no one has any clue what I'm talking about. And it is such a great, underrated movie, man.
And a wonderful score by Michael Giacchino. That is one of the best scores. I mean, I have that score on in the background often. It's so filled with like mystery and like ominous tones, but then like really touching. You know, it's like
Yeah.
it's a very emotional, very complex score. It's terrific.
Yeah, man, I'm like overwhelmed with happiness right now, man. That's so cool. I'm so glad we're on the same page with that movie.
Yeah.
Now I got to go back to Strange Invaders. I don't know why I'm going to keep talking Super 8, but
I know. Yeah.
we'll have to do another episode of me and you where we're talking about Super 8 in its entirety, because that would mean the world to me. When we're talking about Strange Invaders, what is your favorite scene in that movie?
I really like, and I know it sounds weird, I kind of talk about this without giving away. Basically, there's a scene towards the end where we see a lot of the orbs kind of returning back to Earth. It's this wonderfully composed scene. They're coming down from the spaceship, and you see them kind of raining back down on this small town called Centerville, Illinois. And there's something about that moment. And again, we're going back to like the whimsy of this idea, right? That even though we have these scenes, we're talking about the kids scene with the flesh ripping and stuff like that, these kind of more horrific scenes. But that scene, to me, I was like, wow, this is just really cool to watch, really pretty. And I know, you just know that they were watching that scene being like, we nailed it. This is amazing.
Yep, we got it. Everybody high five. Cut.
Yes, yeah. Yes. They're watching the mix on that, just being like, this is it. This is the movie that's going to make us. They're going to be talking about this movie in 2020 on a vidcast.
Oh, absolutely. They're going to want to talk about Super 8. You'll know about that later. This is where we're going. One last question about Strange Invaders.
Yeah.
I hate saying favorite death or favorite kill, but which kill or death really stuck with you the most throughout this movie?
No, it's that one. It's the one in the bedroom that we're talking about.
The kid. Yeah, I thought so, but I got to ask. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just, it's impressive that scene. First of all, I'd love to know how they pulled those effects off. Practical effects, and those effects look great for even their budget. We say their budget, but I'm like, those effects would look great on any level. And when you see that skin shrink down, and then they do that shot, the close up of the kid's face, his head, and the eyes are rolling back and stuff. I mean, it's nightmare fuel. That any horror filmmaker would die to have that level of production in there, like that scene in their movie. It was great.
Right. And like you said, this is one of those movies, I'm telling you guys, again, links down here. Check it out if you got some free time. You're not going to regret it. It's, like I said, it's not a masterpiece by any stretch, but it's entertaining. You're going to want to keep watching. It's a whole lot of fun. Just give it a chance. I promise you, it's worth it.
Well, and it has some really cool like noir stuff too. Like, you know, Paul Lamette's the driver, he's trying to solve a mystery about a death. And there's several scenes where like he walks in and you got these great shots where like someone's feet are on the desk as he walks into the door. I mean, it's Warner Brothers 1930s cool detective shots. Yeah. And you're like, yeah, they just everything they put into this movie, works.
So that is Strange Invaders. Now I got another question for you that's not Strange Invaders related. That was your first horror movie, but let me go scream on you. What's your favorite horror movie?
The Thing.
I'm assuming 1982.
Yep. The original John Carpenter, The Thing. And it's funny. So I was talking to someone about this, and The Thing came up, and she goes, I feel like every guy who's in his 30s and 40s says The Thing is their favorite horror movie. And I was like, I don't know what to say about that, because it is. I think that one, it's the most truly dramatic movie that John Carpenter has made. And yes, I get that he got awards notice for Starman. But like when you have that dynamic of these guys stuck, I'm like, the effects are great. Of course, they're like legendary. And Wilford Brimley as Dot, like his performance in that movie, Wilford Brimley's performance is the thing that I kind of find myself rewatching the most. Like when he's doing the computer work and he's putting together kind of what they're into. There's a chill that runs down your spine with him. And it's such a great performance that I'm like, yeah, The Thing is just top notch. It's relentless.
Well, and the practical effects, like you said, the score. I mean, it's John Carpenter, so you know that he took a lot of time on that score. And The Thing has a great score on it as well. I'm glad you brought up The Thing because that's such a great movie. And not a lot of people know that's a remake of a 50s movie. And they absolutely nailed it on The Thing. Last question I always ask everybody, skull count. We're doing a ranking on Strange Invaders. 0 being the worst, 5 being the best. What's your skull count for Strange Invaders?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to give it a solid 4. I'm going to give it a solid 4. I think it's got some pacing issues in the first act, but as we're talking about, they're not terrible. And as you move along, definitely as you get past that first like 15 minutes and it gets into this mystery and how he's kind of looking back at stuff, then it starts to really glide, And I think if you wanted to do a cool double feature, I think you would do this one and the oh god, what year was it? It's the Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Leonard Nimoy, and like you
Yes.
could pair these movies back to back and have a really cool alien invasion 70s paranoid like freak out. It'd be really
That's
fun.
awesome. Yeah, I didn't even put those two together, but there are definitely similarities in these movies. But there's also, Strange Invaders. I'm glad you turned me on to this movie because, like I said, I had a great time with it. To me, it's like the Jason X. Like a lot of people shit on Jason X, but when I watch that movie, I'm extremely entertained. It's a
Absolutely.
fun movie to watch, and that's how I feel about this. I'm not a purist to the point of I need to be scared and on the edge of my seat the whole. If I'm entertained, I'm entertained. And that's what I love about movies in general. That's the point of movies, is to entertain you. And this movie is absolutely entertaining.
Well, it's funny. I was doing I did an interview with a podcast called Horror Dads. It's really fun. And we got into
I love Horror Dads, man. Those guys are awesome.
They're a hoot. Very nice. And we were talking about this concept of like, people arguing over horror films and trying to kind of choose sides or get quorum on a horror movie, basically being like, we were talking earlier about the Child's Play, offline we were talking about the Child's Play series, and this idea that like, you either have to love or hate them, or they are a horror movie or they're not a horror movie. And it's like, no, you can love Child's Play too, and if somebody else doesn't, that's cool too. Like you can do, horror doesn't have to be one thing. If the movie entertains you, if you find something to love about it, great. Like go with it. And I think we seem to keep repeating that.
I don't know what it is about people nowadays anyway. It's like that. I mean, like, I don't like Child's Play 2. Well, then fuck you. Like, I don't support the president. Well, fuck you. I don't know that guy. I don't care if you like him or not. What the hell do I care? Like, it's just the combative spirit that we have as people now is just so upsetting. Like, and I'm guilty of it a lot too. I'm not going to lie. But I don't think I've ever thought less of somebody because of it.
Right. Well, you see it in variations, Marvel versus DC or whatever. And growing up, I mean, when you were talking about stuff, we were talking about Star Wars. It was always just cool wonderment. It was like, where's Boba Fett from? What's he doing? And you would just like ponder about that for like hours, like where this minor character kind of came from, what he's doing. But it was all good, right? It was all positive. And somewhere along the way, maybe it was internet or message board culture, I don't know. We started suddenly being like, nope, we got to start drawing lines. But what's interesting is when I've had these conversations, I've talked about it a lot, is that people seem to be on board with that. All of a sudden it's like, we can take the temperature down. Let's all just sell it. There's so much to love. Horror's great, diverse genre.
Yes.
Like, we don't have to do this. Let's just all get together. And if you find someone that loves the same movie you do, cool. Then spend 2 hours just talking about it.
Well, one thing I can say about while we're on that type of aspect, I do absolutely love a friendly debate with people about, like remakes. And cause like I said, I'm not the person that thinks remakes are inherently bad. I think there's a lot of very good remakes out there, but I love to debate with people about remakes. And I don't want to give away too much, but me and Steven may be talking about some sequels here in the future on another episode. So again, I'm not one of those people that think sequels are inherently bad. I think there's a lot of great sequels out there. Terminator 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think that movie is absolutely phenomenal, which is not taken away from Terminator. But I just think Terminator 2 Judgment Day is a fantastically made film.
Well, and we were just talking about The Thing. And as we know, a lot of the previous guests on your show, Nightmare on Elm Street 3. This is like, if it's the movie of that franchise that competes with the first one. And to your point earlier, like part 3 might be the most famous Elm Street of them all. I mean, it might just go to the right to the top for a lot of folks. So yeah, it just shows you inherently that sequels and remakes, they don't have to be terrible. That would be bad,
And I think in horror especially, that's the case. I mean, there's a lot of other, like maybe there's some comedies where the sequels usually aren't as good as the original, but in horror movies, there's a lot of sequels that I think are superior to the original because they take what that original started and I'm going Scream on you again, but they up that ante in the sequel. The kill count goes up, the death, the blood comes up, everything gets bigger and badder in the sequels most of the time.
Well, and it's interesting because you can play with them thematically, right? It's almost like how different productions tackle Romeo and Juliet. There's some that will do it as a traditional version. There's some that will do kind of a Baz Luhrmann thing, set in high school, whatever. You get to play around. And then like we're talking about Halloween, right? So you have John Carpenter's classic. And I love Halloween H2O, and I love it in a way that doesn't compete with Carpenter's, right? I love every choice they did with it. It's definitely a Scream vibe. It's definitely like that mid-90s just... like everything they had going on. But I thought the creativity in it and some of the choices they made were fascinating. And I think it's a cool movie. It's just the last part when he's chasing Laurie through that hall and he's just flipping the tables.
Yeah.
I love that scene. I watch it over and over. I just think it's one of the coolest Michael Myers scenes out there. So yeah.
I'll tell you this. I did a 31 and 31 where I ranked the Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th movies from 31 down to 1, my least favorite to favorite. And H2O is in the top 10.
Hey, all right. Just out of curiosity, what was 31?
I did 31 was Halloween 3. Hear me out for a second. There's a huge asterisk with this. Halloween 3 is one of my favorites of the whole franchise, out of all three of those franchises. I have been very vocal about the fact that Season of the Witch, to me, if it didn't have Halloween 3 moniker on it, would have been a cult classic. They would have had sequel after sequel. It would have had a huge following. But part of my criteria for this is it had to include one of the big 3 killers in it. So Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, or Jason Voorhees had to be present in the film in order for me to count it on the list. So Halloween 3 and then Jason 5, when they had Roy Burns as Jason Voorhees, was number 30 because that was not Jason Voorhees. Jason Voorhees was not a part of the film. So due to my own criteria, I had those ones at 31 and 30.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. So out on a technicality.
Yes. But like I said, I'm going to remake Season of the Witch someday as Season of the Witch. Not Halloween 3, but as Season of the Witch. Because that's a movie that it has everything. It's terrifying. It has the saddest ending of all time. It has that damn Silver Shamrock song that gets stuck in your head. 8 more days till Halloween. You know, you sing that for weeks after you watch that movie. That's the movie me and my kids watch on Halloween. We have our holiday horror movies. Father's Day is Creep Show because of the Father's Day. Halloween is that. Christmas is Gremlins. You know, we have our holiday horror movies that we watch together. So that's one of those things that I'm a huge fan of Halloween 3, and it absolutely devastated me to put it at 31. But I had the asterisk right on the video, an asterisk all along the bottom of the screen. Because look at it, that movie gets shit on because, and not a lot of people know it, but Halloween was meant to be an anthology series movie. Halloween 1 was going to be Michael Myers. 2 was going to be different. So I think, honestly, if Halloween 2 would have been Season of the Witch, Halloween 3 would have been whatever else they did after that, you know, the Sponge from Down Under, whatever. Season of the Witch would not have got as unjustly treated as it did. It's of nobody's fault to their own, you know, because they planned it this way, but Michael Myers was just such a hit that people were like, what the hell is this? Where's Michael Myers? We want Michael Myers back. So that's why you get Halloween 4, the return of Michael Myers.
Well, and it's hard at that time too, you know, because Freddy Krueger was such a phenomenon. He was making so much money, and so was Jason. There's this classic story where Paramount actually hated the Friday the 13th franchise. They thought it was so beneath them. They're so embarrassed, but the movies made so much money that as a responsibility, financially responsible, you know, they like had to keep making these things. So it's really hard to look at that and then not be like, okay, we've got to bring back Michael. Like this is clearly what people want. They want these monsters, so he's coming back. You know, kind of thing. So
and that was you got to go where the money is. It's a business.
Yeah, you know? Absolutely. One thing, so I'm going to pull this over really quick. I just thought about this. Some of your viewers may like this. This is a book. I have nothing to do with this book. I just purchased it because I thought it was cool. There's this really cool book called On Set with John Carpenter by Kim Gottlieb Walker. She was his behind-the-scenes photographer. And it's a lovely hardcover book that I purchased. It's basically all of her candid shots from, you know, Halloween, Christine, The Thing, Escape from New York, all that stuff, with great prose and stuff. So if you have fans or viewers out there that like this stuff, give this book a look. It's really cool.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. Well, don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, thank you so much for watching. Stay what you are. Keep talking horror, and we'll talk to you guys soon.